This will not be your typical Patek Philippe sports watch video.
And that's because we have a tray here of atypical sport watches from Patek Philippe, some that you consider to be sport watches and I might not. But regardless, most of these will not be finding themselves on the wrist of rappers on your Instagram feed.
These are going to be under the radar references that may not receive the attention that they deserve, and in true analog shift fashion, will give them their moment in spotlight. Let's get started with the Nautilus. Obviously, everyone knows the Patek Philippe Nautilus, popularized by the reference 5711. The Patek Philippe Nautilus launches in 1976 with the reference 3700, which is a jumbo model. It had sort of a soft reception when it first was released. And by 1981, Patek released the reference 3800, which is a mid-size variant. And in my opinion, this is one of the best pockets of value available in the collections.
Yeah, it's interesting with the reference numbers. As they go up, the size goes down. But that 3800 at 37 millimeters tends to fit pretty much any wrist out there and really set the standard for mid-size sport watches from Patek.
Yeah, the 3800 and the 5800, which are sort of these mid-size iterations, are probably the best Nautilus models because they have a really thin case, beautifully tapered bracelet, and it sits really flat on the wrist. And ultimately, the Nautilus isn't exactly a sports watch. It's more of a dress watch with a bracelet. And because this is sort of hype adjacent, you get much better pricing, in my opinion, relative to the smaller production numbers that these sort of neo-vintage iterations received.
Yeah, and most of these are probably going to be in slightly different condition than you're used to seeing in those 3700s, because while those pieces were a bit more sought after, maybe babied early on, these ones continued to fly under the radar for quite some time. So you might see these carry a little bit of extra patina on the dial, the lume might be aged a little bit more, the bracelet might be worn in a bit, but what it crafts is a really personal watch, and when you pick one up, it's telling the story of the entire journey it's had, and now it's time for you to put your own into it too.
So we've got three different 3800s here. First, the classic stainless steel version with a white date. And this is your blue gradient dial with that teak deck finish that makes the Nautilus so recognizable. And then we have a yellow gold version with a white dial. And then the watch that I'm wearing, which is a 3800 in yellow gold with a blue dial.
And with these three here, we have what I think perfectly exemplifies what is interesting about this collection. There's a lot of variation, and there are quite a few of them too at, like you said, pretty decent prices in the entire Patek collection.
Awesome. You want to move on to the 3900?
Yeah, so a little bit smaller here at 3900, we have the two-tone option, which has the gold in the bracelet, gold on that bezel. This one definitely dresses up the model and shrinks it down quite a bit, and then changes out the movement as well. So now we are working with a quartz movement inside in order to just keep it on the thinner side, allowed the movement to really fit in the case properly, but still giving you the same sort of wrist presence that you might get in larger references, just a little bit smaller for people who might have smaller wrists.
Yep. The important thing to note here is the story of the Nautilus doesn't begin with the 5711. Just because that's the reference that people talk about doesn't mean that there's not great pockets of value still available when you're willing to go back a little further in history.
Please, I beg you, look around and find some more interesting references because they're out there.
All right, you want to move on to the Neptune?
Yeah, Neptune, the funky boy in the collection. This one, obviously, with that kind of guilloche bezel, carrying over into the integrated bracelet. The famous story of this piece is that, it was made for the Russian market, something that was going to be very popular over there and has started to trickle out. When you compare it to the rest of the table and really the entire Patek collection, it stands alone in a lot of ways. This is not a model that was carried forward for a very long time, not produced in very large numbers. And it's one that if you like it, you love it. If you don't like it, you hate it. But it can be a lot of fun. And it's something that still is a very unique thing to go out there and seek out. There are 2 or 3 different variations that you might find. And this one happens to be the black dial with steel, and then the cardinal points are done in Roman. So a little bit dressed up on the dial rather than the very sporty all Arabics that you might find in other models out there.
Yeah, the Neptune's kind of cool because it has a sort of whimsical combination of elements you wouldn't necessarily see together. This watch has a lot of personality, and it's fun to see what personalities gravitate towards that brand of Patek. It's nice to see watches like these that sort of walk the line between dress, sport, and executed in stainless steel. Is a rare commodity, and I understand why people like these, even though it's not my personal favorite Patek Philippe.
Yeah, the funny thing too is it still flies under the radar in terms of Patek, even though Patek now is very commonplace in the watch community. People know the brand, they know a lot of the references. This model in particular is still somewhat lesser known, to the point where when you wear it out, I do hear of people thinking that it's still the Longa Odysseus, which is kind of interesting to see the similarities carried over in two very different brands, two very different models, but people have a hard time spotting it as a Patek immediately.
Yep. All right, let's move along to the Aquanaut collection now. Launched in 1997 with the reference 5060. They made about 1,000 examples, a limited run in 1997 to sort of see how it would be received.
Yeah, a true sport watch introduction for the brand.
Yeah, and this was designed to bring in a younger audience to Patek Philippe with tropical strap, a little more playful, a little more sporty. And then in 1998, Patek Philippe released the 5066, which is essentially a direct replica of a 5060 with the addition of a sapphire exhibition case back.
Yeah.
And this was the first production model that we see. And it was, launched with a variety of other sizes. We had the 5065, which is your mid-size version, slightly larger. 5066 coming in at 35.5 millimeters. There's a 5064 for the ladies market. And this is sort of where the Aquanaut collection for the first time is given its legs to, run wild.
This is one that it came out, it was a bit of a shock to the market, and then largely forgotten about for a little bit of time. And now collectors are starting to find them again. They're getting really popular, especially in Asia. These kind of exploded in Asia, but not necessarily here in the States. And now that, they're making their way out there, there are a lot of people who are really clamoring for those original references, whether it's the 60 or the 66. They want something early on because the dimensions, as you see with these other pieces here, the dimensions have shifted quite a bit from that really compact traditional size to something that is really giving you a flatter, more dominating wrist presence.
Completely agreed. I think these watches are really, really well-made pieces that would work great for everyday wear.
Now, I mentioned in the beginning, you're not going to see most of these pieces on the wrist of your Instagram feed. This is probably the biggest exception on the table because this piece here is one that really has created a lot of zeitgeist. The hype has built around this watch. It has stayed with this watch. This is really one of those models that for a long time dominated the name Patek in the collector mindset.
Yep, so the reference 5167 was released in 2007 to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Aquanaut collection. It was released alongside one of my personal favorite references, the 5165. The 5167 modernized the Aquanaut a lot. You got a slightly flatter dial aesthetic. They changed that grenade dial variation a little bit. And as you mentioned, the strap integrates directly into the case. This is your modern Aquanaut characteristically. And if you want one that sort of characterizes the collection, that's where you go with the 5167. This was made in rose gold as well with a brown dial. That's a really striking reference. And with the climbing prices of the steel variations, the premium you pay for rose gold is sometimes zero.
That delta's shrinking quite a bit.
Yep. So I think the 5167 is a great watch. It's definitely become a hyped reference, but I wouldn't let that punish the watch for being just a great everyday wearing watch.
No, I mean, that's true for every hyped reference out there. Just because you see it a lot doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to be seen a lot. This one, I think, has kind of stood on its own for a while. But if you consider this one to be the modern Aquanaut, is this one futuristic?
I think this one is the one that maybe doesn't deserve to be seen. No, just joking. This is the reference 5168. Now we move to white gold.
Yeah, the G reference.
And I always found this to be an interesting reference because on the one hand, it's white gold, which is one of those like stealth wealth sort of materials for Patek Philippe because from a distance you wouldn't know, or even up close, you wouldn't necessarily know that this isn't steel until you get it in hand.
You feel the weight difference for sure.
But when you couple that with a upsized case dimension at, I believe, 42 millimeters here, all of a sudden you get a watch that has a completely different personality, and this wears large.
It does, yeah. Even on my wrists, it looks like a large watch. I have larger wrists, and people see it. People see it as soon as you walk into the room. Yeah.
I actually do like this watch. I love the blue dial against white metal. It's really, really beautiful. It's just too big for my wrist personally. And I think a lot of wrists kind of get crowded out on this one.
For sure. Would you take it over the green dial?
Yes.
Yeah, I would too. It's
a blue gradient versus the green variation of 5168. It's a sort of a matte green. They call it a khaki.
Yeah.
In many cases, it's really cool, but the blue is where my eyes are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now on our tray here, this is where you start to lose me a little bit in the Patek Sport category because now we're looking at references that are sporty in their design, but I don't think many people would consider them sport watches. Do you want to start off with the Calatravas?
Yeah, so the goal here is essentially to highlight the fact that the definition of a Patek Philippe sports watch in some ways is an oxymoron. You get watches like the Nautilus, which as I said before, are more dressy than they are sporty, arguably, even though many people will tear me up in the comments on that.
Please do.
That'll be fun. I enjoy reading it. The 6007 is part of the Calatrava family, but it's sort of got at least one foot in the sports watch door.
And it's a laced up driving shoe.
Exactly. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the 6007 came in a variety of colorways, yellow, blue, red. It's a more fun Calatrava than you're used to seeing. You get these Arabic indexes, yellow details on this yellow iteration. You also have the blue iteration here.
Yeah.
And then they carry those design cues straight through the strap, which is made of leather, but in a sort of carbon finish.
Right.
And then you get contrast stitching that matches the dial details. These are cool watches. They wear larger than you might think.
They do. When they carry the heft of white gold.
Yeah. It's probably a good everyday watch more than a sports watch, but
sure.
it has sporty elements, and that's why we mentioned it here.
I think it's a reference to that's on the come up. You know, these ones did fly under the radar when they were first introduced. They were definitely a deviation from traditional Calatrava. And at first, I think it put a bit of a sour taste in some collectors' mouths because they were looking for the more of that traditional field watch style that you get from a Calatrava. And this is not that. But as they've aged, I think they've aged really well. And people are starting to come back to them now, looking for, again, the outlier in the collection, something that's not going to be the same Calatrava that they see on their friends' wrists when they go to a dinner party.
While the 6007 initially is perceived as maybe a misfit, it allows some collector misfits to step into the Patek Philippe door.
Sure.
So moving along, now we hit what I consider to be probably the most dressy of the watches that we have here.
Absolutely.
But its complication is sporty, and the execution, yes, and the execution is definitely on the sportier side. That's the reference 5960.
Yeah.
So 5960 is a Flyback annual calendar chronograph. These were recently discontinued. It's been replaced with the 5905. But what you get here is probably one of the sportiest dress watches out there.
I would argue that when you add the calendar, it takes away the sportiness of the watch, but having a Flyback in there, that is a sporty complication. So it starts to, again, get its foot in the door into this category that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and when you look at 6 o'clock at the chronograph register, everything's been crammed into one spot. And that has contrast coloring, which again reinforces the sports aesthetic. When you put this next to a 5205 or another annual calendar in the modern collections, that's when you start to see just how sporty this watch is, because the 5205 is definitely entrenched in the dress watch category, and the 5960 is just a little bit more adventurous. This particular iteration has pump pushers, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
These are great watches, available well under $100,000. They come in some really cool colorways also.
They do, yeah.
And I like the 5960, even though it's too big for me to wear, just a little bit.
Now, a serious question for you though, Sam. We do have a diamond between the lugs here, denoting that this one is crafted in platinum. Can a sport watch be made of platinum?
I think a sports watch can be made of whatever people want it to be made of if they like it.
That's fair. All right. I would like to know what other people think, if you can wear a sport watch made out of platinum or not. For me personally, I think gold is fine. I think that Rolex maybe set the tone, but I don't know that platinum has really broached that category in my mind quite yet.
I mean, we also saw platinum Nautilus come out.
Sure.
I don't have a problem with platinum on sports watches, especially when you consider the fact that what we're looking at is a luxury watch. So
Through and through, yeah.
when you think about it, you could ask the same question: can a luxury watch be a sport watch?
When I'm wearing it.
I think you can. Again, the question is it more of a lifestyle piece? Is it actually getting the hard wearing use? If you're comfortable with gold for sports, platinum's a harder material. So if really it's an argument about utility, platinum should blow away gold. Arguably, it should beat steel.
Yeah.
Because it's harder. It's just more expensive. It's a noble material. Having a diamond between the lugs while you're playing sports is a kind of cool thought.
You can blind your opponents with it.
Yeah, that's like aspirational. Like someone's coming for the ball and you're like, but did you see this diamond?
Right. What sport are you playing?
Keep your eye on the ball. Anyway, I think this gives us a really good cross-section of what the diversity of Patek Philippe sports watches looks like. I, for one, have been tremendously enjoying wearing 3800s around the office the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I think more people should be looking at these watches. They're criminally undervalued, although they're rising in prices rapidly.
Yeah.
Both as mid-size watches in general get more popular, and neo-vintage pieces are getting more collector attention than ever before.
Yeah, I implore anyone out there to look into the catalog a little bit deeper. Get past the hype cycle, get past your Instagram feed or YouTube or whatever you're looking at, and dig into the references that maybe are sought after and deep in collector enthusiast communities, but maybe not in the broader spectrum, because they're, like we mentioned, a lot of fun things out there.
Anyway, there you have it. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. Let us know what your favorite Patek Philippe sports watch is. Even if it's the 5711, we'll still happily read through all of your comments.
Yeah, tell us how wrong we are in the comment section down below and how bad our opinions are. But if you do want to see any of these in person, stop into our showroom, book an appointment, and get some hands-on with them.
And just to make sure that the wrappers out there don't feel alienated by Devin, if any wrapper's interested in getting a really awesome 3800, please reach out to us at Analog Shift. We'll be happy to show you all the excitement that exists in the vintage world of timepieces.
We'll steer you in the right direction.
We'll see you next time.